الله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We are continuing on our discussion on Nahj al-Balagha that we had before the month of Ramadan. I think that's session. And if you remember the phrase, the excerpt of the letter of Imam alayhi salam to Malik al-Ashtar that we discussed in the previous session was the statement in which the Imam talks about interdependency of different social classes of society, one upon the other. And I explained in the previous session that it's very significant, very important principle in governing a society, the understanding that no single social class, no single group is independent, and no government can rely on one group of the people at the cost of another. And Imam explained this very beautifully. So what we are going to talk to now, the passage in which Imam alayhi salam explains, elaborates on the connection between different social groups of the community. And this is very insightful and very beautiful when we look at the letter as the manifesto of Islamic governance, the way that Imam connects different classes of the people together. It's very insightful and very amazing considering the context of the letter, the time the letter was written, and how it applies very fittingly on the modern context that we are living with. So Imam alayhi salam mentions several groups in the passage that we are going to discuss. He talks about al-Junud, soldiers. He talks about the judges. He talks about administrators, scribes, merchants, people of industry, people who have skills, certain skills, industrial skills. And he also talks as the seventh group about the poor people, needy people, which I touched upon it in the last part of my section on the significance of Imam including the poor people within these classes. And I will elaborate, inshallah, on it more tonight. So what Imam mentioned, as we just reviewed, it was a general principle of social interdependence. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ الرَّعِيَّةَ طَبَقَاتٌ لَا يَصْلُحُ بَعْضُهَا إِلَّا بِبَعْضٍ. Malik, know that the people, they are different social classes, that none of them is interdependent, none of them is totally independent of the others. Then Imam continues by tracing the chain of dependence between these classes, link by link. He tries to, what he established as an abstract principle, he tries to elaborate it and demonstrate it as a concrete practical picture here. So the rhetoric that Imam uses in the passage is extraordinary. Imam uses a kind of recurring formula that la qawama li illa bi. There is no standing sustenance for the group of X except through group of Y. It's very interesting. It's a formula that Imam uses in this passage, which creates a chain of existential dependency, which goes through different segments of the society. And Interestingly, the passage also redefines the rule, the job of a ruler, the role that Malik as a governor is expected to play here. It is not the role of head of the society who is at the apex of a pyramid and commands downward. So the people who are below him has to just obey. It is not the kind of the picture, the role that Imam assigns to Malik as the governor. Rather, the ruler, the way that Imam describes him, is the custodian, is the guardian of these linkages between different classes. So he has to maintain, to ensure that the link between these classes works in the best possible way. There is no interruption. There is no disturbance. So this the network works seamlessly. That's how Imam alayhi salam defines the role of the ruler here. So Imam gives Malik specific administrative directives and instructions for each group. And the passage works as to provide the theoretical justification for why every single class deserves the governor's direct attention. So Imam starts with the first group, who are the soldiers. And Imam describes them as the fortress of the people. فَالْجُنُود بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. The soldiers are, by Allah's permission, حُصُونُ الرَّعِيَّةِ. They are the fortress of the people. وَزَيْنُ الْوُلَاةِ. They are the ornament of the rulers. وَعِزُّ الدِّينِ. The might of religion. وَسُبُلُ الْأَمْنِ. And pathways of security. وَلَيْسَ تَقُومُ الرَّعِيَّةُ إِلَّا بِهِمْ. And the people cannot stand except through them, except through a strong army, except through soldiers. So it is interesting the way that Imam defines the army. It is not in the term of their might, their power. That, for example, explaining and defining them as the ones who have the mighty power, military power. Imam describes soldiers in terms of their service to the community. حصون الرعية. They are the ones who have these tasks, these responsibilities, these contributions to the society. First, they are the fortresses of the people, حصون الرعية, which implies very beautifully that the army's primary purpose is defensive, because that's what a fortress does, protects people against the external threats. So the army's primary task, Imam says, they are حصون الرعية. They are like fortresses protecting the people. It's a defensive task. Then Imam continues calling them Zainul Wulat. They are the ornament of the ruler. And it's a very insightful point that a ruler without an effective army, effective military power to safeguard his country and his people is without credibility. It's the army that gives the ruler the authority, that gives ruler the possibility to serve the people, because unless the security is safeguarded, unless the security is provided, no country can be on the path of development, flourishment. And the third expression that Imam mentions for the army is the benefit of the army and the contribution of the army. Imam says, وَسُبُلُ الْأَمْنِ. They are the ones that they are the pathways of security. As mentioned, the security is the foundation upon which every social function depends. They are the military. They are the ones who uh, guarantee the security of the roads, of trade, of civil life, so on and so forth. And finally, the Imam mentions وَلَيْسَتْ تَقُومُ الرَّعِيَّةُ إِلَّا بِهِمْ. It is the final clause, and it's very important. Imam establishes the first link in the chain, that society depends on military power for its very survival. If you are not powerful, there are those rules, there are those tyrant rules that they don't hesitate to uh, conquer a country, to decimate a country, to destroy a country. So one of the main responsibilities of a ruler is to ensure that he establishes a powerful military um, uh, ground for the country to protect the people and protect the society. And Imam here mentions it's subtle, but it's very beautiful and important mention here, point here. When Imam talks about the uh, army and its benefit, Imam starts by a condition. فالجنود بإذن الله. The soldiers with the Allah's permission. So it is not the case that their power would be unconditional. No, it is Allah who gives power to every earthly power. If Allah doesn't approve and doesn't give consent, even the most mighty militaries would fail. So everything, the success of the military depends on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the main cause. He is the main, the very thing that every movement in the world relies on him. So just the Imam's wording is just heads up that yes, there's a mighty military power, you need to have it, and if you have a strong military power, they can protect the people. But don't forget, everything relies on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the one. That if he decides, even the most powerful civilizations in the history, they go down in a blink of an eye. And the same expression, which is about the importance and significance of having a stable and a strong military presence for the country, you see it emphasized in the verses of Quran. So we have in one of the verses of Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the necessity of having this military presence. وَأَعِدُّ لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ مِنْ قُوَّةٍ. I did not write the name of the chapter, but it's chapter 8, verse 60. وَأَعِدُّ لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ مِنْ قُوَّةٍ. And prepare against your enemy, against them, whatever you are able of power, which is the exact command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one can ask why. Isn't it the case that he is the true power behind everything? Why he commands us to prepare a strong military? Because this is the divine condition. And Allah an yujri al-umura illa bi-asbabiha. Everything in this world has to go through certain means. The causality, the law of causality. One cannot, for example, sit at the corner of his house and expect Allah to send rizq and sustenance. One has to take a step to strive to his capacity, and yes, it is Allah who provides, but there's a condition for it. So the same principle applies here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you want to protect yourself, first you should show your commitment, that you know, so you prepare the conditions for it. وَعِدُّوا لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُم مِّن قُوَّةٍ, and prepare against your enemies whatever you are able of power. وَمِن رِبَاطِ الْخَيْلِ تُرْهِبُونَ بِهِ عَدُوَّ اللَّهِ وَعَدُوَّكُمْ, and this steeds of war by which you may terrify the enemy of Allah and your enemy. It is interesting that what the verse talks about, تُرْهِبُونَ بِهِ عَدُوَّ اللَّهِ وَعَدُوَّكُمْ, is to instill fear, to terrify your enemy. So the army's function, as the verse of Quran, is primarily, as the Imam ﷺ mentioned, is defined to deterrence and protection. It's a defensive purpose, and to instill fear in the heart of the enemy so one does not dare to attack. Not the conquest and domination. That's not the purpose that Quran defines, and that's not what Imam ﷺ mentions. And this army, when it comes to the quality of the army, is chapter 61, verse 4. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إن الله يحب الذين يقاتلون في سبيله صفا كأنهم بنيان مرصوص. Indeed, Allah loves those who fight in His cause in a row as though they are a structured joint family, strong, steadfast. Allah loves these people who are so strong against their enemy. They don't bend a knee. They are resisting against their enemy. So it is interesting again here in the verse, the emphasis on the كأنهم بنيان مرصوص. بنيان مرصوص means the solidly joined structure, which is parallel to what Imam mentions, Husun, fortress. So both of them is about having a kind of structural integrity. It is not about individual heroism. It is not about individual power. The army together as one single hand, as a fortress, as a single unit to protect people, to stand next to each other, stand against the enemy. So this is a very profound expression that Imam ﷺ has about the army and the role that it has to play. And then the Imam establishes the link between army and another class of the society. ثم لا قوام للجنود, then there is no sustenance for the soldiers. إلا بما يخرج الله لهم من الخراج, except through what Allah brings forth for them from the land tax. Kharaj at that time was referred to land tax, or today we can say it's part of the tax that people they pay. So Imam says the soldiers cannot continue their responsibility. They rely on the tax that the people they pay. So the very foundation of the soldiers and their mighty power relies on the people, on the mass. Then Imam ﷺ explains the purpose of this tax that is being paid to military, what it has to do. Imam says, الذي يقوون به على جهاد عدوهم. So three purposes Imam mentions. First, it's about military capacity, by which, so these sustenance that people they provide, the tax that people they pay, by which they are strengthened for the struggle against their enemy. على جهاد عدوهم. So it's about equipment, it's about supplies, it's about readiness. So the tax that people they pay enables the government to provide equipment, supplies, and have a ready and updated military. And then Imam continues, وَيَعْتَمِدُونَ عَلَيْهِ فِيمَا يَصْلِحُهُمْ. It's a matter of personal welfare. So Imam says they also use the tax for what sets them right, ما يصلحهم فيما يصلحهم. So it's about their living condition, it's about families, about dignities. So the soldier who is fighting on the front line should not be concerned about whether his family can survive, whether they have enough to live with. So it's the responsibility of the government to ensure that these personal needs of the people who are putting their lives on the line for the country, that this kind of concerns would be addressed properly. ويكون من وراء حاجتهم. And the third usage, Imam says, is about comprehensive provision. So it is not only about personal needs, it's not only about the military equipments, the supplies, it's also about what Imam refers to as whatever is beyond this, covering, for example, what lies, so other kind of necessities that they might have. It is, again, reflect on the fact that we are talking about a letter was written 1400 years ago. But this is a remarkably astonishing modern understanding of military economics. So Imam recognizes that soldiers who is financially insecure, a soldier who relies on bribery, a soldier who resorts to corruption, this kind of the army that is that includes such kind of personnel, such kind of soldiers, they cannot do the job. So Imam alayhi salam highlighting for Malik that you should pay attention to the linkage between the mass and how it is through them, through the tax they pay, that military survives and military can do their responsibility. In other words, if you neglect your tax-paying population, it undermines your country's security, because the military would not be able to provide the protection that your country needs. And again, another subtle expression Imam alayhi salam has here, similar to the previous expression when Imam mentioned about the might of the army, said bi'idhnillah, with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here also when Imam talks about the tax being paid to the army, Imam mentions بما يخرج الله لهم من الخراج. So Imam says that by which Allah, by the money, the tax that Allah brings forth for them through tax. It's a very important point. It's a very theologically significant point, that it is not your extraction, Malik. It is not your money. It is not you who provide it. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who provides that. Allah is the one who gives means to the people so they can pay tax, through which you protect your country by establishing a strong military. So again, it's a moral lesson that Imam highlights here, that kind of delegitimizes exploitation of the tax that people they pay. Imam says, what Allah, the tax that people pay, it is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He designed it this way. So there are certain means that you ought to expend them, to spend them in those means. You cannot spend them for your own gains. You exploit them. Every dollar that is being paid as a tax, it has a mean to be spent on for the sake of the people. This is a very beautiful insight that Imam alayhi salam mentions. And Imam alayhi salam also is very careful. We have in some of the expressions, we have in letter 25 of Nahj al-Balagha, that Imam talks about the tax collectors. That Imam mentions even the style, the approach that the country, the rule must follow in collecting tax, maintain the dignity of the people. It's very beautiful. Imam says, فَلَا تُرَوَّعَنَّ مُسْلِمًا. When you are going to send people to collect tax, if you are establishing a system to collect tax, do not frighten any Muslim. Do not frighten the people. Do not pay the tax system something that people are afraid of. Do not collect tax by force. وَلَا تَجْتَازَنَّ عَلَيْهِ كَارِهًا. And do not pass over one's land against his will. You are not allowed, for the purpose of collecting tax, to violate the private life of the people. وَلَا تَأْخُذَنَّ مِنْهُ أَكْثَرَ مِنْ حَقِّ اللَّهِ فِي مَالِهِ. And do not take from one more than one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, more than Allah's right in his wealth. The same point that in this letter, Imam mentions to Malik, that there is a share of people's wealth that belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah only asks that share to be paid. We cannot ask for more. A fair share that people pay doesn't hurt their life, and it would guarantee that you can use it for the purpose of the rule, for the serving the people, for establishing a strong military, so on and so forth. And then the Imam goes further, establishing the third link. So the first group that Imam talked about were the military people. But then the Imam established the link between the military and the mass by arguing that military cannot survive without the people. So it's very beautiful kind of circular connection, that people rely on military for protection, for their protection, and military rely on the people for providing for them. So this is interconnected, an interdependence network that Imam portray here. And then the third link that Imam establishes here is that the both classes, so both the soldiers and the mass, they rely on a third category of the people. ثُمَّ لَا قِوَامَ لَهَذَيْنِ الصِّنْفَيْنِ. So the soldiers and the tax-paying people, there is no sustenance for them إِلَّا بِالصِّنْفِ الثَّالِثِ, except through the third group. Who are the third group? مِنَ الْقُضَاةِ وَالْعُمَّالِ وَالْكُتَّابِ. Judges, administrators, and the scribes. So three categories Imam defines here, which all can be addressed under the administration in a sense. These are the officials, that the people that the government pay them to do the different responsibilities of the government. So it's the judges, to the administrative staffs, matter of the bureaucracy, and the ones who maintain the records is on the of what happens within the rule or the contracts or so on and so forth. They are the ones that have a clear record of how the government works and how the interaction with the people, the legal, for example, clauses, so on and so forth. They are the ones who are recording it. So it's the administration in overall. So Imam mentions that this is this link, the link of the soldiers and the tax-paying people on this administrative class of the people is perhaps the most politically insightful point that Imam mentions in this passage of the letter, that he highlighted a strong army and a prosperous tax-paying population, both useless without an honest and competent bureaucracy. A corrupt bureaucracy A corrupt administrative class can ruin both the tax-paying class and the military class. This is what we see in many uh, countries around the world nowadays, the corruption. When the corruption comes, when the bureaucracy becomes corrupted, it impacts the military, it impacts the people. So Imam highlights the importance of this matter, that the military power and the economic production both depend on the rule of law and administrative order. So here, that's what the three groups of the people that Imam mentions. First, about the judges, because without the judges to enforce the contracts, to enforce the law, so the property and the right of the people would vanish, would be violated. So the judiciary system, it is the skeleton, it's the pillar that holds the body, the political body together. Without a strong judiciary system, the corruption would take over. The bureaucracy would take over the administration, and then it would inflict the army and the other parts of the society. Someone says this is one important part: the judges, the judiciary system, and then al-ummal. Here, consider the context. It means that the ones who are responsible for administrative tasks, especially the collecting the revenue, collecting the tax. These people should be the sincere, the righteous people. Again, because these are the people who handle, who maintain the link between the taxpayers and the military. If they are corrupted, so what the people pay as a tax does not reach to the army and the other sections of the society. And then the last group that Imam mentions is that Kutab. So is more specifically about the ones who the bureaucracy who handle everything, the individual disputes, the state level policy, that they are the kind of the connective tissue of the governance. The regular staff that they work in different offices in the country. These are the third group. So Imam says that overall the institutional infrastructure is as essential to the state's survival as military force and economic wealth. We cannot have a healthy society, a flourishing society, only by having wealth, people who pay tax, and the strong army, because they would not last long without a powerful and healthy network of bureaucracy that uh, uh, gives a strength to them and makes and maintains a connection between them. And this is also interesting. You see that in the verses of the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is chapter 4, verse 58, when addresses Prophet Dawood, Ya Dawood, inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ard, fahkum bayna an-nas bil haqq. So Allah says, O Dawood, indeed we have made you a wise regent upon the earth. So judge between the people in truth, rightfully. So again, so the verse highlights the importance of the role of the Dawood as a judge. So someone who can ensure that the law is being equally applied to all the people in the community. And so many expressions we have in the verses of Quran when, for example, that the purpose of the prophethood, لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ, so the people that they can maintain justice among them. So having the justice within the society, having the justice established in different patterns of the society, it is the pillar for the society to work properly. And then Imam establishes another link here. وَلَا قِوَامَ لَهُمْ جَمِيعًا. And there is no standing for all of them. What we mentioned here. The soldiers, the tax-paying people, the administrative, uh, uh, the class with all different groups that they have. There's no standing for them collectively except for إلا بالتجار وذوي الصناعات, except through the merchants and the people of skill in industry, industrial skills. And then Imam continues, فيما يجتمعون عليه من مرافقهم, through the amenities that these people, the merchants, the people of industry, they provide the supplies. ويقيمونه من أسواقهم, and the markets they maintain, the marketplace they maintain. ويكفونهم من الترفق بأيديهم ما لا يبلغه رفق غيرهم, and the manual trades that they perform that which the skill of the others cannot reach. These are the people who have the skill of running the economy. And Imam says all of those other groups cannot survive, cannot have a standing without a proper economic elites, economic class that would help the people to have income so they can pay tax. This is the industrial class that provide jobs to the people, and the people they work, they can provide for their family and they can pay taxes. This is these merchants who establish the links of trades, brings wealth to the country. You know, it's very beautiful. You see that modern notions of governance, how Imam alayhi salam elaborate them in few short sentences so beautifully in his manifesto of governance 1400 years ago. So when Imam talks about the expression of jami'an, collectively, it's the key word in my opinion in the sentence. That Imam says that all of them together, they rely on this uh, 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 class of the people, the merchants and the people of industry with the industrial skills. So it's about the economic foundation of all political power. Again, what Imam mentions here is that a ruler who neglect trade, who neglect the industrial skills through excessive taxation, through market interference, if the rule tries to disturb the way that the market works, through the social content for the manual work. The ruler who does that, the ruler who disturbs this network, the underlying network, dismantles the very foundation upon which his administration stands. So Imam makes it very clear for Malik that this is what you have to pay attention to, how these classes they work together. Yes, you need the army. If you don't have it, your country cannot survive. But you also need the underlying uh, ground, the underlying class, the merchants, the economic, the kind of foundation of your country. And then Imam adds another class, which I mentioned, I touched upon it in the previous session, which I found it very astonishing. When Imam talks about the seventh category, and that's the category of the poor people. ثم الطبقة السفلى من أهل الحاجة والمسكنة. Then the lowest class, the people of need and people of poverty. الذين يحق رفدهم ومعونتهم, those for whom aid and assistance are a right you must fulfill. So I find it very interesting because Imam somehow, in the words of Imam, defies the logic here. Because in the other classes, other groups that we talked before, the last 6 groups, every group was contributing in a way to the way that the society it works. Soldiers, they protect. The tax-paying people, they are providing for the soldier, for the community. The administration, They are the way that the connection between the taxpayers and the military and the other sections of the community is being established. The economy foundation, everything relies on them. But the last class that Imam adds to this group does not go within the same uh, wisdom of category. They don't contribute in the sense that they do something for the community, or at least they are within those groups. These poor people, they are included in different classes of the community. But why Imam separately names them as a independent group that a ruler has to pay attention to them? So it shows that Imam alayhi salam is concerned specifically about the class of the people who have no voice, no leverage, because they don't have the power of the military. They don't have the power of the wealth of the economic class. They don't have the power of the administrative class, who are in a way they are connected to the government. So they go usually invisible. And power tends to neglect them. That's why the Imam refuses to build a government that only serves the people who serve him back. Imam is specifically concerned about them. The language is specific language. Imam, when Imam talks about the people, Imam doesn't say that, for example, it's yustahab, it is recommended, or for example, ينبغي, it is proper. Imam says يحق, it is a right that you must fulfill. And Imam says what you have to fulfill as a governor, as a rule. Says that the expression is يحق رفدهم ومعونتهم. So rift here is connotates the kind of the direct material giving. So like grants, provisions, sustenance, whatever they need for their day-to-day life. But then ma'una here connotates broader assistance. So helping them, for example, to get a job, to become self-sufficient, to support their families. So in other words, Imam orders Malik to think of a comprehensive welfare mandate, comprehensive social system, social care system to take care for the poor. So interestingly, Imam doesn't use the same formula that he used for the other classes, law, qawama, so it's not no standing for X, illa B, except through Y. Imam doesn't use it for the poor people. So because it is not the case, they may not be that necessary ingredient for the community to work. Instead, Imam focuses on the obligation, the moral obligation, the language of moral and legal right. يحق. So it's the moral obligation of the ruler to take care of them, even if they can't provide much, even if they are people who are disabled, even if they are people who are sick, they cannot work. So they cannot, in the sense of material kind of provisions, help the country, but they are part of the community. They are the responsibility of the ruler. They are the responsibility of different classes of the people to provide for them, to take care of them. And this is very beautifully, I just mention this point and wrap up my talk tonight. This is the same concept that you see the verses of Quran talks about them. When the Quran talks about the responsibility of the believers, is chapter 51, verse 19, says that one of the responsibility, one of the attributes of the believers are في أموالهم حق للسائل والمحروم. And in their wealth, there is a known right, حق. Doesn't say it's recommendation, it's good to do that. It says this is a right. في أموالهم حق للسائل والمحروم, for the one who asks and for the one who was deprived. So believers, they should pay attention to the fact that what they have is given to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there is a share left in their wealth, the rich, that belongs to the needy people. And this is in the same concept that we have it in another word of Imam Ali alayhi salam, is one of the words of wisdom in Nahj al-Balagha, is Hikmah 328. That Imam alayhi salam says, إن الله سبحانه فرض في أموال الأغنياء أغوات الفقراء. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has imposed in the wealth of the rich the sustenance of the poor. There is a share in your wealth that does not belong to you. Allah distinguished it for the needy people. فما جاع فقير إلا بما منع به متع به غني. So Muhammad says, no poor person goes hungry except because of what some rich person has been given enjoyment, because they didn't pay their share. وَاللَّهُ تَعَالَى صَائِلُهُمْ عَنْ ذَلِكَ. And the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will question them about that. That these people, they went hungry because there was a share for them that I dedicated in your wealth, and I ordered you to pay it, and you didn't do it. And it's also very beautiful to understand from a religious perspective that the flourishment of a community depends on taking care of the poor class. It is not only a matter of charity, it's a matter of sympathy. It's very beautiful. Is the hadith from the Prophet, peace be upon him. And the Prophet says, أبغون الضعفاء فإنما ترزقون وتنصرون بضعفائكم. Seek me among your weak people, seek me among the impoverished people, because for you are only given provisions and victory on the account of your weak ones. It is because you are taking care of them that Allah becomes generous to you. Allah gives you so much provisions, Allah gives you victory. But the community who neglects the weak class of the community, the poor people, the impoverished people, the barakah and the blessing will be deprived from the whole community. This is a very beautiful, metaphysical lens that the Prophet presents here. So, just to wrap my discussion, Imam alayhi salam explained in this passage very beautifully that what he mentioned before, that the relationship between different classes of the community is kind of interdependent relationship. Then Imam explained it here very beautifully in a way that fits very astonishingly with the modern concept of the government and many of the theories that are recent in Western kind of scholarship. The Imam talks about how the soldiers, how the taxpayers, how the administrative class, how the economic foundation, the merchants and the people of industry, they are connecting to each other, they support each other, and how they have the collective responsibility to take care of the weak people, the society. It's a very beautiful and insightful view that Imam alayhi salam presents in the letter. And again, this is what makes us proud that we inherit this kind of rich tradition of Imam Ali alayhi salam through the Nahj al-Balagha and through the other sources. And may Allah gives us the blessing to reflect upon and to benefit, and inshallah in practice to apply them in building a successful and flourishing community for ourselves, inshallah. Recite the salawat.